Welcome to the post-winter rituals of the medieval world, where surviving the coldest months wasn't the end, it was just the weird-smelling beginning. You've been marinating in layers of wool smoke and body odour since October. The snow has finally melted, revealing things that might once have been furniture, and your limbs are functioning at about 60%. Congratulations, you're alive but barely sanitary. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag yourself outside and stretch under a lukewarm sun, only to be greeted by the pungent hiss of the communal bath kettle. Someone's already boiling the cleansing blend, which is, to be specific, 3 parts cow urine, 1 part holy water, and a pinch of last year's dried rosemary. The theory ammonia purifies rosemary, blesses in holy water. Well, holy water makes it officially not heresy. This isn't optional. Spring means renewal, and you, my crusty survivor, need spiritual and epidermal exfoliation. And trust me, the smell of hot cowpea clinging to your skin like a devotional mist is considered invigorating. You undress behind a tattered cloth tied between 2 posts, step into a half barrel and brace yourself. A bucket of the golden brew is sloshed over you by Brother Arnulf, who mutters a prayer and then offers you a clump of sheep's wool tied to a stick. It's your loofah. It squeaks. You scrub and scrub. And at some point you realise this is actually working. You're shedding a full season's worth of soot-based emotions and despair. You feel lighter, cleaner, slightly traumatised, but hopeful. Once cleansed, you wrap yourself in a hay-dusted cloth and shuffle toward the fire pit. There others are drying off, while awkwardly avoiding eye contact. One woman is humming a song about spring lambs. A child is sniffing their elbow in confusion. This is rebirth medieval style, and it doesn't end there. After bathing, you're expected to bless your home using the same general principle. If it smells like it died in winter, it must be spiritually unwell. You mix ash from the hearth with cow urine again and dab it above the doorframe with a goose feather. This supposedly keeps demons from slipping in unnoticed. Historians still argue whether this practice had any link to pagan traditions or was just a very committed excuse not to mop. Inside, everything must be scrubbed, smoked or shaken. You burn dried herbs in a clay bowl, mostly mugwort nettles and anything that doesn't smell worse than you. The smoke curls into the corners of your hut, chasing away the cold spirits and waking up the spiders. Someone bangs on the beams with a wooden spoon while chanting, "Out foul frost." You nod solemnly. You don't know why. You just do. The centerpiece of this odd cleansing ritual is the winter doll burning. You and the neighbours build a straw effigy, stuff it with old socks, leftover onions, and whatever root vegetable has started whispering. You give it a name like Chili Bert or Lady Freeze Breath, and then you set it on fire in the middle of the road. There is cheering, minor singeing, and at least one chicken has an existential crisis. After the fire, there's the blessing of the dust. Yes, dust. You sweep your house, gather the finest, fluffiest pile of winter debris, usually from behind the stew pot, and save it in a jar. This is your spring luck. People say that keeping it above the bed ensures you'll dream of mild weather and fewer boils. Some say it also attracts fairies. Some say it's just dust. You finish your day by airing out your clothes, which is less romantic than it sounds. You hang them on every available branch, nail and goat horn, then slap them rhythmically to wake up the fibres. Children run between the sheets, like ghosts, while elders sit nearby, explaining which articles of clothing belong to which uncle and which ones were cursed by mildew. You, wrapped in your only dry tunic, stare at your little hut now, lightly smoking from herbal fumigation, and feel proud. Cleanish, you smell like victory hay and something suspiciously tangy, but you've honoured the season. You've passed the first test of spring, But don't relax just yet, because now it's time to grab a stick and go knock some sense into the trees. You take the stick from a village elder who looks entirely too excited. It's a gnarled branch, maybe hazel, maybe oak, maybe something that used to be part of someone's roof. No one knows. What matters is that it's the whacking stick. You join the slow march toward the trees, accompanied by a small group of villagers, a slightly drunk priest, and at least 3 toddlers dressed like root vegetables. The mission: wake up the trees, loudly, repeatedly, and with just a hint of passive aggression. It's called the beating of the bounds, although this version is less about borders and more about convincing the local orchard not to die this year. You find your favourite tree, maybe one that gave decent apples last year, and begin to slap its trunk with determination. Not out of anger, of course, out of love, because everyone knows trees grow better when mildly threatened. Some shout, "Wake up, you lazy log." Others whisper sweet nothings to the bark while gently tapping it like a sleepy relative. You try both. You end up apologising to the tree halfway through. It accepts. Historians still debate whether this ritual actually helped crops or just gave people something to do while waiting for mud to stop being the dominant terrain feature. But the symbolic message was clear: winter, your lease is up. Please vacate the premises. Then comes the tree dancing. Oh yes, once every tree has received its seasonal spanking, you and the rest of the village join hands and circle the biggest tree in the field. There's clapping, there's stomping. There's a moment when someone falls into a molehill and pretends it was part of the choreography. Children carry ribbons, chickens carry confusion, and someone always brings out a flute that only plays 2 notes loud and louder. After the dance, there's the hanging of charms. Bits of cloth, tiny wooden carvings, and very old bread are tied to branches as offerings. One man swears that tying his mother-in-law's old sock to the tree made his barley double in size last year. You choose to believe him, mostly because he's waving the sock in your face. And then finally there's the toast, not the bread kind, the drink kind. You pour cider or ale around the base of the tree, murmuring a blessing that's part prayer, part poem, and part drunken improv. You are essentially bribing the tree with alcohol, which makes sense. It worked on you all winter. The ritual ends with someone shouting, "Let the sap rise." Everyone cheers, the trees do not respond, but you feel like they heard, probably. You walk back to the village, your arms sore from tree whacking your boots, covered in 5 varieties of mud, and your soul inexplicably lighter. It's ridiculous, yes, but it's also the first time in months that you felt the earth move beneath your feet and not just freeze your toes off. Back home, there's one final step: collecting the whacking stick ashes. Yes, the stick must be burned. You snap it in half, toss it into the hearth, and watch it curl into smoke. This smoke, they say, keeps your potatoes from growing weird faces. You don't want weird face potatoes. No one does. As the fire crackles, someone knocks on your door. It's the local candle maker. She's smiling in that specific way that means either I need help or I've been doing something deeply unsettling. You invite her in, not knowing yet that she's about to show you a candle made from her late uncle's leftover fat. Because when wax runs out, medieval people get creative. You stare at the candle. It is squat, slightly lopsided, and definitely smells like bacon left on a church altar for too long. The candle maker holds it up proudly and says Uncle Reginald always wanted to be useful, even after his last breath. Welcome to one of the more resourceful medieval practices, recycling human fat for household needs. It's not common, mind you, but it happens often enough that no one screams when it's mentioned. Apparently, if someone dies in winter and there are no beeswax supplies left, well, you do what you must. Historians still argue whether this was born out of ritual superstition or simply the cold logic of not wasting materials. But here it is, glowing faintly on your table, illuminating your evening stew with a very personal kind of light. You light the candle. The flame flickers. A shadow moves on the wall. You pretend it's not Uncle Reginald checking in. The candle is part of a larger tradition, spring protection rituals. Now that the cold is retreating, the spirits are said to wander more freely. Some are lost souls, others are mischievous, and a few just want to borrow your livestock. So you must prepare. You start with the ash lines, sprinkling a thin trail of ash around your doorstep windows, and especially the chicken coop. Spirits, as every grandmother knows, hate getting ash on their feet. You've never met a spirit who confirmed this, but you're not about to risk your eggs. Then you take a bowl of water and set it near the entrance. Not for drinking. This is watch water. You check it every morning. If there's a ripple and no one sneezed nearby, it means something passed through in the night. If there's a bug in it, it means nothing except your windows need better sealing. Tonight you perform the blessing of the corners. Holding your human fat candle high, you walk to each corner of your hut and whisper, "Out with the old, in with the warm." Some people add a rhyme, some people sneeze halfway through. The point is to make sure no winter spirit has set up shop behind your firewood. When the candle burns low, you snuff it with a piece of black cloth. Not your fingers, that's bad luck. Black cloth passed down from someone who survived 5 winters and a goat cart accident is the only approved method. You step outside where the village is preparing for the circle of bread. It's exactly what it sounds like. Everyone brings old loaves, some so hard they double as weapons, and arranges them in a big circle in the town square. You walk the circle clockwise 3 times. The bread is meant to trap bad luck. On the 4th lap, you throw in a crust from your winter stash. It crumbles like a memory. Someone lights the centre loaf on fire. Everyone cheers. A dog howls. A goose tries to join the procession. It is chaos and beauty wrapped in crumbs and flickering flames. Afterward, the ashes of the bread are mixed with flour to make the first spring pancake. You eat it solemnly, knowing this one might carry a hint of smoky wisdom, or just charcoal. By now the candle maker has gone, Uncle Reginald too, but the air feels clearer, safer, as if the very walls are breathing again. Spring may be strange, but it is also sacred. You put away the black cloth brush, the last ash from your doorstep, and notice your neighbour standing outside in full ceremonial attire, which in this case means 2 scarves and a chicken under one arm. She nods. "It's time for the ash bread ritual," she says. "Of course it is. Time to eat soot for protection." You follow your neighbour to the village green, where a long table has been set up with exactly one thing on it: bread. Not just any bread. These loaves have been baked with ashes from the winter dole burning, plus a dash of salt, a pinch of sour herbs, and according to rumour, 1 crushed snail for luck. The result, charcoal grey biscuits that look like they lost a fight with a fireplace. This is the ash bread ritual, a spring tradition where eating something mildly unpleasant is meant to keep worse things away. You pick up a piece. It crumbles like burnt dreams and smells like someone tried to toast a root vegetable with a torch. You take a bite. It is exactly as bad as you expected, but everyone around you is chewing solemnly, some even nodding in approval. You chew slower, just enough to look wise, not suspicious. Historians still debate whether the ritual had any nutritional merit or was simply symbolic. Eat the ash to leave winter behind. Eat bitterness to invite sweetness. Some say the herbs used were mildly medicinal. Others say it was just what happened when the flour ran low and people got creative. After the meal, a storyteller stands up on a wobbly barrel and begins to chant, not sing chant, a long poem about a villager who once tried to skip the ash bread and was immediately visited by 7 frogs and a ghost with wet feet. The moral is vague, but the entertainment value is high. Then comes the second course. No, not more bread. This time it is fermented goat milk custard, also known as spring pudding. It jiggles. It smells faintly of grass and regret. You swallow it while smiling because someone is watching and you do not want to offend the goats. As night falls, the tone changes. It is time for the night whispers, a quiet ceremony where villagers share secrets to release winter from the soul. You sit in a circle wrapped in a blanket that used to be a curtain and listen as old Mrs. Elspeth admits she once stole a turnip out of boredom. Someone else confesses to singing to the cows during snowstorms. You offer up your own whisper, something small, embarrassing, but safe. The idea is that if everyone lets go of one dark winter thought, the village becomes lighter. You are not sure if it works, but you feel a bit less heavy. As the whispers fade, someone plays a single flute note, and a young boy starts spinning in slow circles. You blink. Is this part of the ritual? No one stops him. He continues spinning until he falls over and giggles and says he saw a fairy in the firelight. Everyone claps. You clap too. You do not ask questions. At the end of the night, you are handed a tiny cloth pouch. Inside are dried herbs, salt, a sliver of charcoal, and one mystery object. This is your sleep sachet, meant to hang near your bed to absorb lingering cold. You thank the pouch maker and try not to wonder what the lumpy bit is. You walk home under a sky full of stars, your stomach full of strange textures, your heart oddly warm. The season is changing, and so are you. As you hang the sachet by your bed, you notice a familiar scent drifting in the window. It is not wood smoke, it is not goat, it is romance, because after months of hiding under layers of wool, everyone in the village is suddenly looking less frostbitten, and tomorrow is the beginning of courtship season. You wake up the next morning to an unusual sound. Laughter, flirtatious, awkward, nervous laughter. It echoes across the fields like a flock of mildly embarrassed geese. Courtship season has officially begun. After months of shared blankets, cracked lips, and mutual goat smells, the village has collectively remembered that yes, human attraction is still a thing. People are bathing, clothes are being washed. One man is even seen combing his beard with a fishbone. You step outside in your cleanest tunic, which is to say, the one with the fewest holes. The sun is out, birds are arguing in the trees, and the air smells slightly less like mould. It is a good day to fall awkwardly in love. Traditionally, spring courtship begins with a flirtation toss. This involves gently tossing a small object at someone you find interesting. A flower, a ribbon, a piece of turnip. If they smile and toss something back, it means maybe. If they duck or throw a rock, probably not. You practice with a pebble and accidentally hit the baker's son. He blinks, hands you a slightly warm pastry, and walks away. Success, you decide not to overthink it. After the toss comes the mud dance. No one really calls it that, but it involves dancing, and you are standing in mud so the name fits. Everyone gathers in the village square, where someone has found a drum, and someone else has brought out a jug flute. The rhythm is enthusiastic. The steps are mostly made up on the spot. You find a partner twirl once and immediately lose a shoe to the ground. Your partner applauds. You keep dancing. Historians still debate whether these dances were structured or simply chaotic displays of energy after a long winter. Records show songs with titles like The Quick Goat Polka and Spin Till You Fall, so that tells you something. Later in the day, couples may choose to perform the trial of togetherness. It is a test of compatibility. You and your chosen person are tied together at the wrist with a long piece of cloth and must perform 3 tasks: carry water, stack firewood, and share a slice of bread without using your hands. You and the baker's son attempt it. The water spills, the wood collapses, the bread is eaten quickly, and no one is sure who actually bit first, but you laugh. That counts. If a couple survives the trial without yelling or blaming the goat, they may leave the square with the cloth still tied. It's a good omen. If not, the cloth is cut and used to make shoe liners. At sunset, the love lanterns are lit. Each person lights a small candle in a hollowed-out beat and sets it on the stream. If the candle floats far and straight, your romantic year is blessed. If it sinks well, maybe next spring. If it catches fire, you are forbidden from flirting for a week. You light yours carefully, whisper a wish into the flame, and release it. The beat floats gently, glows steadily, and bumps into someone else's beat. A gentle collision, a sign perhaps. Later you see neighbours sharing stew songs and long glances. Spring is working its odd muddy magic. And just as you settle in for a quiet evening, a shout goes up from the village road. The traders are coming. Because what is love without a little marketplace chaos? You run toward the sound of shouting, your beat lantern. Success still fresh in your mind. Down the muddy road comes a wagon with one wheel wobbling dramatically and the other two creaking in protest. On board are barrels, crates, 3 goats, and at least 6 different types of merchant hats. Spring trading season has begun. For months, roads were too frozen to travel, and bridges were more ice than wood. But now that the thaw has come, so have the traders, bringing with them all the mystery, excitement, and unidentifiable smells of distant towns. You walk into the gathering crowd just as a man leaps off the wagon and announces elixirs, relics, and 2 whole wheels of cheese with only minor mould. A woman behind him shakes a bell and displays socks made from wool, dog fur, and possibly something else. Market day has returned. Your village square is now a maze of makeshift stalls, yelling, and animals that may or may not be for sale. You duck under a hanging sausage and find yourself in front of a man selling healing powders that smell like baked clay and regret. He insists they cure cold toes, bad dreams, and romantic confusion. You buy one mostly because he looks like he hasn't blinked since last Tuesday. Nearby, a woman offers scented waters, which turn out to be water stored next to strong-smelling onions. You sniff politely and move on. At the cloth stall, people argue over shades of brown. Dark brown, muddy brown, maybe grey brown. You find one that looks less like winter misery and more like potential happiness. You buy a strip for later use, perhaps for a festive sash or bandage. In one corner, a young boy sells charcoal sketches of local pigs. You recognise one. It winked at you last week. You buy the drawing. Traders also bring news, some true, some wildly creative. Someone claims a village 3 towns over was visited by a glowing goose. Another says they saw a priest levitate using only cabbage. You nod respectfully. It is not polite to challenge miracle stories in spring. Historians note that market days were more than just commerce. They were social lifelines, a place to see who survived winter, who gained a new scar, and who mysteriously now owns 3 new chickens. There is music too. A pair of flutists duel for tips, playing overlapping tunes that sound like love songs, trapped in a barrel. A man with spoons tied to his knees tap dances in the mud. People toss coins, bread, and occasionally potatoes in appreciation. You eat a pastry filled with something sweet and possibly legal. It is warm, flaky, and tastes like hope. As the sun dips, the market winds down. Traders pack up, promising to return, with more socks, fewer goats, and maybe real sugar next time. But the real prize of the day is the mushroom guessing game. One stall offers baskets of dried mushrooms, with the sign, one is delicious, one is suspicious. One will give you visions of talking geese. You're allowed to choose only once. You pick the middle one. Chew slowly, nothing happens. Then the clouds look like they're waving. You blink. A beat nearby seems to hum. Perhaps this is part of the game. Perhaps the beat is just proud of its earlier performance. You go home with your pockets full of small treasures, your head slightly spinning, and your heart ready for what comes next. Because after markets come feasts, and after feasts, fermented eel. You wake up the next morning with a head full of fog and a vague memory of a beat humming at you. But there's no time to reflect. Today is a feast day, and the village is already vibrating with excitement, drums, and the unmistakable aroma of something being boiled that should probably not be boiled. This is not just a meal, it is a victory parade in edible form. You survived winter. You did not freeze, starve, or get eaten by your own chickens. That calls for celebration. Loud, messy, slightly questionable celebration. You head to the square, where tables are being stacked with food offerings. There's bread in all shapes round square, pretzel accident, cheeses that have aged so aggressively they now have names, and meats, so many meats. Some from animals you recognise, some from animals you politely decide not to ask about. The centrepiece of the feast is a local specialty fermented eel jelly. It has the consistency of regret and the colour of stormy water, but villagers swear by it. It is said to bind the body to spring and cleanse the gut in 12 confusing ways. You take a small scoop, it wobbles, you eat it, you regret it immediately, but pretend it is delightful. Feast day is also a time for performances. The juggler is back now with 3 apples and a potato. The village poet stands on a barrel and reads something about ducks and destiny. A pair of farmers perform a dramatic reenactment of a winter argument about whose pig was louder. Children race with turnips, adults cheer, and someone always ends up wearing a pie. This is tradition. There is also the feast blessing dance, which involves walking in slow circles while holding a spoon of stew and chanting, "Warm bellies, warm hearts." If your stew spills, you must start over. If you trip, the village laughs. Gently, probably. Historians suggest these feasts were crucial social glue, reminding everyone that life continued, laughter returned, and community endured. And if you didn't laugh at your neighbour, slipping on mashed peas, when would you? As evening falls, the fire pits are lit and stories begin. Not just any stories, mystery tales meant to confuse the listener, just enough to distract from any digestion issues caused by the eel jelly. One tale features a knight who forgot why he left home and ended up married to a sheep who may or may not have been enchanted. Another involves a fish who steals dreams and opens a bakery. You listen, bellyful, eyes drooping, wrapped in a blanket that smells of herbs. An onion. Life is warm again, in more ways than one. Then someone remembers we still need to fix the roofs. Because after every celebration comes the realization that winter broke almost everything you own. The morning after the feast, you wake up with bits of pie in your hair and a vague promise you made to someone about helping fix their goat pen. You quietly hope they forget. But your own roof is another story. The wind howls through the gaps in your wall like a ghost practicing its flute lessons. High-pitched, indecisive, and oddly personal. Every few minutes, it changes tune, as if remembering a different haunting. You pull your cloak tighter, but it is less a cloak and more a large napkin with ambitions. A patch of straw that used to be part of your ceiling is now floating gently in your stew pot, adding unwanted seasoning to what was already a questionable turnip broth. You sigh. The season of repairs has officially arrived. You step outside and immediately regret it. The sunlight is pleasant enough, but everything else is aggressively broken. The village is buzzing with activity, which in medieval terms means people are either shouting, hammering, or falling off something. Thatched roofs gape like unfortunate smiles, fences lean like they've just been told terrible news, and doors hang crookedly on one hinge like they've given up on privacy entirely. On the left, a woman balances on a barrel trying to nail a loose shutter while simultaneously scolding her cat. The cat is not listening. On the right, someone is attempting to repair a wheelbarrow with soup. Just soup. You decide not to get involved. And there in the middle of it all is Giraldo, a man of great confidence and no formal training, wrapped from head to toe in rope and wooden planks. He insists he has invented a personal scaffolding system. It mostly looks like he lost a fight with a fishing net during a storm. Every movement produces a loud creak, a puff of straw, and at least one shouted apology. Safety first, Giraldo proclaims, tripping over a goat and landing in a pile of damp shingles. I meant to do that. You nod slowly and keep walking. Your own home needs attention. The door squeaks like a gossiping mouse. The shutters open only when bribed, and the roof leaks, in 4 places or 6, if you count diagonal rain. You gather your repair kit, which includes 3 bent nails, a hammerhead with no handle, 2 bundles of straw, a prayer to St. Fixitus, patron saint of improvised carpentry, 1 suspicious-looking rabbit's foot for morale. You climb to the roof using a ladder that has seen better centuries. It wobbles like it's considering retirement, but you make it up with only minimal swearing. The thatch is artistic. Part of it has been pecked away by birds. Another section looks like it was eaten by something. You start layering new straw with all the skill of someone who once watched someone else do it correctly from a distance. Below, your neighbour shouts encouragement. Looking good, like a proper roof almost. You toss down a piece of old rope. Want to trade for a hinge? Only if it's not cursed this time. You pretend not to hear. Halfway through your repair, the wind picks up again, catching your thatch bundle and flinging it onto a nearby goat. The goat now looks surprised and well camouflaged. You take a moment to appreciate nature's fashion choices before retrieving your building materials and your pride. Back on the ground, you tackle the door. Currently, it swings inward, outward, and sometimes sideways. You remove it entirely, lay it flat, and begin repairs. The hinges squeal, the wood groans, and a small spider angrily vacates its home in protest. You reinforce it with scrap timber, leftover shoe leather, and a spoon. It's not pretty, but it closes without requiring brute force or a prayer circle. Prayer. Next, you examine your window. Technically, it is a hole with intentions. It used to have cloth over it, but that was taken by the wind during the candle festival last winter, and is probably still floating somewhere in the next shire. You nail a new piece of oiled parchment across it. The light it lets in now is soft golden and slightly smells of sheep. Your fingers are sore, your tunic is splinter-filled, and your stomach is growling louder than your neighbour's ox. But your home is becoming a home again. Home. In the distance, someone shouts, "Success," followed immediately by a loud crash, and I meant for it to lean like that. You smile. The village repair effort continues into the afternoon. At one house, a family is using clay old wool and crushed reeds to plug gaps in the wall. The father claims this method was taught by monks. The mother rolls her eyes and mutters, "Drunk monks, maybe." Elsewhere, children gather broken tools and try to trade them like medieval baseball cards. "I've got a bent rake and half a bucket. I'll trade you for a splinter and a rock that looks like a chicken." There is a repair parade scheduled for tomorrow, where villagers show off their finest fixes. Winners receive prizes like a whole carrot, a new patch of cloth, or the deeply coveted golden ladle spray-painted with yellow mud and glitterberry dust. Last year's winner repaired an entire staircase using only cheese rinds and determination. As the sun begins to dip, you sit on your newly patched doorstep, sipping turnip water from a clean bowl. Your door stays closed, your roof holds. A bird lands and does not immediately steal part of your house. This is progress. Across the way, Geraldo waves from his scaffold, now accidentally tied to a chicken. He smiles. The chicken looks resigned. Tomorrow you'll fix the table, maybe redig the drainage trench, possibly convince the stew pot to stop smelling like straw. But tonight you rest, because the season of repairs is long, slightly chaotic, and always full of surprises. You grab your repair bundle, twine leftover cloth, suspicious nails, and hope. You start with the roof. The straw is brittle, the beams sag, and something up there is nesting. Possibly a bird, possibly a spirit, possibly both. You knock gently. No response. You proceed. Thatching in theory is simple. Lay bundles of straw in overlapping rows. In practice, it involves splinters, awkward angles, and yelling. Hold that there to someone already holding 5 other things. Eventually, you achieve something between shelter and barn with ambition. Your neighbour waves from her rooftop and proudly shows you her invention, mud paste with crushed beetle shell, supposedly waterproof. Historians are still debating whether it worked or was just another way to use up the beetles. Either way, it smells strong and looks like it's trying to escape the bucket. Next up is the door. During winter, you just shoved hay in the gaps and hope no wolves noticed. Now you must rehang the hinges using a wooden peg and what can only be described as rope made from twisted laundry regrets. It holds, mostly. Then come the tools. You inspect your shovel. It now has the structural integrity of a wet pancake. You reinforce it with a stick and a prayer. The rake is missing 3 teeth. You carve new ones from leftover bone. It works, but now it growls softly when dragged. You accept this. Repairing clothing is its own adventure. You lay out your tunic, which is more whole than fabric, and begin stitching with thread made from goat hair. It itches. Your fingers protest. But slowly, the tunic becomes a tunic again, slightly more crooked but proud. Historians note that repair in the medieval period was not just about necessity, it was a ritual of restoration. People patched, mended and reworked not just objects, but their sense of order. Fixing your hut meant reclaiming your space from chaos. Children are given helper jobs, which mostly means being sent to find things that don't exist. Go fetch the left-handed hammer, someone says. The child nods determined. It will be an hour before they realise the joke. Later in the day, the village hosts a fix-it parade. Everyone marches through the square, holding their most impressive repair. A chair with 4 legs again. A shoe, now waterproof, thanks to moss. One man parades a spoon he has entirely regrown from bark. There is applause, laughter, and one deeply emotional speech about patching a winter blanket. You join in showing off your door, that now creaks in a charming way, and your roof that only leaks if the rain is sideways. As night falls, the fires glow and the tools are set aside. The village is no longer in survival mode. It is rebuilding. You sit by your hearth, feet up on your newly stable stool, and smile. Then you hear the horn, the warning horn. You sigh, because sometimes spring does not bring peace. Sometimes it brings your neighbours from 2 valleys over, and they want your chickens. You freeze mid-sip of your spring herb tea as the horn echoes again. Low, long and dramatic, the medieval version of a text saying, "Hey, we're coming to steal your livestock." This is not uncommon. Spring means melted roads, passable trails, and suddenly everyone remembers that they have old grudges. Perhaps your village insulted their root vegetables last year. Maybe someone accidentally borrowed a goat and returned it with a different name and a limp. Either way, the neighbours are here, and they look very interested in your chickens. The village leaps into action. Baskets are overturned, poles are grabbed, and a group of elderly women form a defence circle around the stew pot. You grab your repair-hardened shovel and run toward the central green, where someone is already yelling about strategic turnip placement. This is what medieval self-defence looks like. Sticks shouting, and an improvised wall made of firewood and 3 very confused sheep. Historians note that small-scale raids between villages were surprisingly common in the spring, often over food tools or insult-based economics. No one wants to fight in winter and summer is for harvest, so spring gets the drama. You join a group preparing the mud pit trap, a shallow ditch filled with water cabbage leaves and one surprisingly slippery eel. It is meant to slow down attackers and mildly embarrass them. You test it, you fall in, it works. Meanwhile, a blacksmith's apprentice is forging something with great urgency. It turns out to be a helmet made from a stew pot. You nod approvingly. It shines, smells of parsnip and fits if you squint. There is a brief strategy meeting where the plan is mostly look big, sound angry. Everyone practices their loudest yelling. One man coughs halfway through and decides to stick with interpretive shouting. Then the visitors arrive. It is not an army, it is 6 people in a cart. They wave. Someone mutters, "Oh, it's just them." Apparently the threat was exaggerated. Again. Still, protocol must be followed. There is the formal chicken denial ceremony. You stand in front of the chicken coop, arms crossed, while the visiting party politely inquires about your hens. You reply, "Our chickens are private citizens." This is met with nods of forced respect. An exchange of goods is arranged instead. 1 wheel of possibly real cheese for 3 bushels of possibly clean apples. Peace is declared. Everyone relaxes. The stew pot helmet is removed and ceremonially filled with cider. The eel is released back into the mud pit, where it immediately resumes being suspicious. There is laughter, awkward hugs, and someone plays a victory song on a goat horn. The horn breaks halfway through. Still, the mood is good. These brief border tensions, while stressful, serve a purpose. They keep communities, sharp alliances fluid, and the rumour mill turning. Plus, they give everyone an excuse to use the mud pit. You return home muddy, but triumphant. Your chickens are safe. Your turnips remain yours. Spring has tested your readiness, and you did not throw your shoe at anyone. This is growth. You sit by your now well-patched door, sipping the last of your tea when someone sneezes loudly outside. Not just once, 3 times in a row. You blink, because everyone knows what that means. The spring cough is back. The sneeze echoes like a drum roll for doom. You peek through the cracks in your door and spot your neighbour, hunched over, wrapped in a blanket and wheezing in rhythm. It is official, the spring cough has returned. Just when you thought you were safe. Everyone focuses so hard on surviving winter, they forget that spring comes with its own brand of trouble. The snow melts, the puddles grow, and suddenly the world is full of things that should not be damp. You step outside cautiously. There's a sour scent in the air, not quite rot, not quite stew, just seasonal mildew, the kind of smell that warns you to walk carefully and never sit on anything soft. The village healer is already on the move, handing out pouches of dried mint and instructions that range from inhale this steam to avoid eye contact with frogs. You take both seriously. You try to convince yourself it is just allergies, maybe a little tree pollen, maybe the ghosts of the onions you burned during the ashbread ceremony. But then someone mentions that the river has started bubbling at strange hours, and now you are less convinced. Historians note that medieval people had a rich tradition of misidentifying symptoms. A cough could mean bad air, bad luck, or that you forgot to knock on wood after feeding a left-handed chicken. In any case, there is only one response: panic politely. You prepare your home for quarantine. This involves hanging an herb bundle over the door, placing a shoe upside down on the windowsill, and politely asking the cat to guard your stew. The cat ignores you, but that is part of the ritual. Then comes the smoke test. A handful of dry moss and 2 dried beet leaves are burned in a bowl. You watch the smoke pattern. If it rises straight up, you are safe. If it swirls, you might catch the cough. If it forms the shape of your least favourite uncle, go lie down. Yours swirls slightly. You go lie down. Meanwhile, the village is taking precautions. Communal spoons are banned. Shared hats are discouraged. The public cuddle bench is temporarily closed. Instead, people return to old traditions. One of them is face bundling, wrapping one's head with cloth soaked in vinegar and reciting a poem about being too strong to sneeze. You try it. It smells like salad and shame, but your sinuses do feel clearer. Someone starts a rumour that the spring cough can be cured by drinking beet broth while standing on one leg. You try that too. It does not work, but now you can balance better. At the healer's hut, there is a new concoction being distributed. Hot turnip tea with a hint of garlic bark. You drink it and instantly regret it, but your chest does feel warmer. That might be hope, or acid, hard to say. As the cough spreads mildly and dramatically, people begin sharing their own remedies. One man insists you should whisper your symptoms into a clay jug, and then smash it under a full moon. Another suggests licking a rock that has never seen daylight. You decline, but only after checking your pockets for an appropriate rock. The mood in the village shifts to cautious optimism. People keep their distance, but they smile more. Some say getting a little sick is just spring's way of clearing out winter's dust. Some say spring is trying to kill you with style. You wake up one morning to birdsong, no cough, and the smell of something roasting that might actually be food. You survived another test. As you open your door and let the fresh air in, a passing traveller tips their hat. You nod back, realising it is the first stranger you have seen since the thaw. The roads are open, the world is moving again, and the monks are coming. You squint down the road as a slow-moving group approaches, their robes fluttering like sails on a lazy ship and their sandals slapping the mud in solemn rhythm. The monks have arrived, not the usual stay in the monastery quiet as a statue kind. These are wandering monks, part spiritual messengers, part walking mystery box. Every spring they travel between villages to share wisdom, collect donations, and maybe trade relics for bread. Or cheese, definitely cheese. The lead monk carries a staff with 3 bells and a chicken feather tied to the top. A second monk pushes a wheelbarrow full of scrolls, candle stubs, and what looks like a very confused hedgehog. The third smiles at everyone like he knows secrets about your past. You smile back cautiously. They're here to cleanse the roads, not physically, of course, spiritually. They chant over crossroads, sprinkle blessed water onto ruts, and whisper to suspicious puddles. You follow behind, watching as one monk ties a ribbon to a tree and declares it safe for future travel. Then comes the relic display. This is always the highlight. The monks open a wooden box lined with velvet goat fur and mystery. Inside, a tooth said to belong to a famous saint, a spoon believed to stir miracles, one piece of string touched by divine wind. You lean in closer. Everything smells faintly of beeswax and very old soup. You are allowed to touch one item gently, reverently, and only with your left pinky finger. You choose the spoon. It hums. Or maybe your stomach does. Hard to tell. Later, the monks offer spiritual advice in exchange for offerings. A piece of bread earns you a chant for clear weather. A handful of herbs gets you a blessing for healthy knees. One man donates an entire wheel of cheese and receives a long scroll of handwritten encouragement. The monks also distribute vision cards, thin bits of wood painted with mysterious symbols. You draw one. It features a chicken on top of a ladder. The monk nods solemnly. You are destined for strange elevations, he says. You nod back. It feels true. As evening falls, the monks gather everyone for the evening recital. They sit around the main fire and read from ancient texts, but not the dramatic fire and brimstone kind. These are gentle, meandering tales of saints who accidentally cured sheep angels, who lost their sandals, and one heroic farmer who dug a perfect ditch. It is oddly soothing. You lie back listening to the cadence of the stories, your head resting against a warm stone, your feet toasting near the flames. One monk drones on about a blessed goose that laid glowing eggs. You sigh happily. You want that goose. Eventually the monks retire to the guest hut, leaving behind a faint smell of herbs and mystery. The village settles into sleep, but not you, because as you walk back to your hut, a terrible sound reaches your ears. It is coming from your chicken coop. You rush over, only to find feathers everywhere, one panicked hen perched on your roof, and the rest of your flock giving you the silent treatment. It is happening. The chickens are rebelling. You stare into the coop. There is silence. Tense, feather-filled silence. One hen flaps dramatically onto the fence, stares you down and lets out a single defiant cluck. You have seen many things this spring: boiled urine baths, turnip races, flaming bread circles, but this may be the most personal. The Great Chicken Rebellion has begun. It always happens around this time of year. After surviving the winter and regaining full control of their beaks and tempers, chickens begin to remember who they really are. Tiny, fluffed-up anarchists with strong opinions and fast feet. The issue, as always, is egg production. You lean in and whisper, "We had a deal." The hens blink at you. No eggs. Not even a hopeful squawk. One hen pecks the dirt in a way to Contio. You try everything. More straw, gentle music, a freshly scrubbed perch. You even try the traditional method, placing a shiny rock in the nest to inspire competitive laying. The chickens ignore it. One kicks it out of the coop. Desperate, you try the ale method. It's simple: feed the hens a tiny amount of warm ale to relax them into productivity. You bring out a carefully measured cup, whisper apologies to your ancestors, and offer it like a medieval sommelier. The hens sniff. One takes a sip. Another eyes you suspiciously, then pecks your boot. The rest hold firm. No eggs. Then comes your last resort, the rooster dance. You perform it with full commitment, hands flapping, feet scratching a few well-timed clucks. It is said to mimic the behaviour of a confident rooster and restore egg balance to the flock. You finish breathless. The chickens look unimpressed. One lays an egg, just one, but it is something. Historians note that while none of these methods were scientifically reliable, they provided excellent exercise and emotional expression. You leave the coop exhausted but victorious-ish. One egg is enough for now. Maybe tomorrow they will forgive you. Maybe not. As the sky darkens, you return to your home. The fire is steady, the roof mostly holds, and your face no longer smells like ash bread. You sit by the hearth, the place that once meant sheer survival and now means comfort. Warmth no longer just keeps you alive, it wraps you in peace. Around you, voices murmur bedtime tales, the wind hums gently through the trees, and the goats snore like little bagpipes. You survived the coldest nights. You danced with turnips, ate jelly eels, bartered with monks, dodged chicken politics, and came out with only minor scratches. Spring has fully arrived. The world is muddy, blooming, chaotic, and beautiful. You close your eyes. Let it all melt away now. And now, with your journey through the muddy lanes and smoky huts of the medieval spring complete, it is time to settle fully into rest. You have trudged through strange rituals, stood in the steam of boiling oddities, and watched entire villages come back to life. One spoon, one chant, one perfectly balanced beat at a time. Around you, the rhythm of that world softens. The fires flicker lower. The sounds grow rounder, slower, like words mumbled through a half-dream. The people you've met, chanting monks, turnip dancers, brave hen negotiators, they all return to their routines, ready to rest just like you. Picture it now, a soft pallet of straw beneath a sturdy thatched roof. A faint breeze through the cracks in the wall. A blanket that smells of herbs and warmth. Outside, the chickens settle in grudging but calm. A goat snoozes nearby, its dreams filled with grass and songs. There is nothing left to fix, nothing left to prepare. Only the quiet, only the firelight, only you breathing slowly, safely, deeply. Let the last echoes of medieval footsteps fade behind you. Let the weight of their stories rest gently across your shoulders. You are warm, you are still, you are home. Sleep well, traveller. You wake to the sound of something bubbling ominously in a cauldron. It is not stew, it is not glue, it is soap, or at least something the village now insists is soap. You are summoned to the town green, where 3 elders are stirring a thick, greyish concoction that smells like sour milk and burnt toast. A 4th elder stands nearby, holding a bouquet of wilted herbs and muttering encouragement to the pot. This is the first spring batch, one explains. It should hiss. That means it's working. The pot hisses. You take a cautious step back. This is screaming soap, a cleansing agent and mild moral reckoning all in one. Its key ingredients: ashes from the winter doll burning spoiled goat milk mashed root of something called whistleweed, and a dash of lime if available. Which, of course, it is not. Historians remain baffled by this concoction. Was it symbolic medicinal punishment for those who skipped the winter hygiene rituals? No one knows. But it's thick, it's loud, and it is now being ladled into small wooden bowls for personal use. You are handed your portion. It jiggles slightly. You are told to rub it between your hands while reciting a short cleansing chant that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby for angry badgers. You begin rubbing. It squeals. You blink. Everyone else nods knowingly, so you continue. After a few moments, the squealing fades and your hands are slightly cleaner, possibly more cursed. The line is thin. After the soap is rinsed away, preferably with rainwater caught during a full moon, you are rewarded with a ribbon of clean cloth and a pat on the head by the elder, who smells most like boiled thyme. This is considered a spiritual upgrade. As part of the ritual, villagers also wash their tools. You witness a man polishing his rake with a serious expression while humming to it. His rake gleams afterward, and someone says it looks 5 years younger. One woman soaks her walking stick in a bucket of soap until it lets out a deep sigh. She smiles and whispers, "That should keep the gnomes away." Later, the leftover soap is stored in jars and hidden in various places around the village, under beds, behind doorposts, even in the chicken coop. These are known as scent guardians. Their job is unclear, but the idea is that any spirit brave enough to face screaming soap deserves whatever happens next. That night your dreams smell faintly of vinegar and wisdom. You wake up feeling unusually purified, but your neighbour is already knocking, waving a chunk of bread and shouting, "Come quickly! The fortune teller is reading stew today," because who needs tarot when you have crumbs and soup? You follow your neighbour through the misty morning, still blinking away the last traces of your soap-scented dreams. Ahead, the village square is unusually quiet. No flute practice, no chickens arguing. Just a small wooden table, a pot of stew, and the breadcrumb oracle. She is seated on a stool that creaks with meaning. Her shawl is covered in small symbols, many of which appear to be upside-down turnips and crescent-shaped carrots. Her eyes are sharp, her hands steady, her spoon ancient. You have arrived at the stew scrying. This is the one day a year when the village allows a respected elder, who once correctly predicted 3 births and the mysterious appearance of a goose in the well, to tell the future using breadcrumbs and soup. She motions you forward. You sit, she nods. A bowl is placed in front of you. It is warm. It smells like potatoes, mystery greens, and a hint of judgment. She picks up a crusty hunk of bread, tears off 5 pieces, and holds them over the bowl. One by one, she lets them drop. They float mostly. She leans in. The crumbs have spoken. Everyone watching leans in too. You feel your shoulders tense. First crumb spun counterclockwise. That's a delay in romance, she says. Second crumb sank. That's a hidden secret in your cupboard, possibly cheese-related. You try not to look guilty. Third crumb floated to the north side of the bowl. That means luck in travel, but only if your shoes are uneven. You make a mental note to file one heel down slightly. The 4th and 5th crumbs clumped, she continues. That means she pauses, looks closer, then smiles a visit from someone unexpected. Tall, slightly damp, probably carrying a fish. You blink. She dips her spoon in the broth, sips once and nods again. It is confirmed. Around you the villagers murmur in awe. Someone claps politely, you bow, slightly dazed. She hands you a tiny cloth pouch filled with the prophetic crumbs. You are to keep them by your bedside until the full moon. After that, feed them to a chicken and watch which direction it pecks. This will determine whether you should start a new project or avoid vegetables for a week. Historians have tried to decode stew-based divination for years. Some believe it was tied to ancient seasonal cycles. Others suspect it was invented during a particularly long lunch. Either way, it feels strangely accurate. As you leave the square, others step forward with their own bowls. One man brings barley porridge. Another offers beet soup. The oracle frowns and reminds them it must be stew, not slop. They apologize. The session resumes. You walk home with your pouch of destiny and a mind full of questions. Who is this tall, damp visitor? Why would they carry a fish? Should you clean your cupboard before they arrive? But before you can dive too deeply into mystery, a shout rings out from the west end of the village. The fence is singing again. You sigh, because you are hoping for a quiet afternoon. You arrive at the western fence line, breath visible in the crisp spring air, only to hear it for yourself, a low, steady hum. Not wind, not bees, and definitely not the usual creaking of aged wood. This fence post is humming again. Everyone calls it the singing fence post, and no one knows quite why it does what it does. Some say it was built from wood cut during a lightning storm. Others claim it was once part of a minstrel's bed frame. A few whisper that a bard died nearby while composing a song about onions, and his final notes got stuck in the grain. You crouch next to it, listening. It hums in a minor key, the same 3 notes, over and over. A local child tosses a pebble at the post. It pauses, then hums faster. You make a note to avoid annoying it further. The village elder, who claims partial ownership of the fence, based on proximity and emotional investment, insists the post responds best to stories, so naturally you are volunteered to tell it one. You clear your throat. Once upon a time, a very cold goat wandered into a bakery. You begin. The post wavers. You continue. There it found warmth, companionship, and 3 loaves of day-old rye. The post lets out a brief trill. You keep going. The goat was hired as assistant baker, learned to make excellent croutons, and eventually wrote a memoir titled From Hoof to Hearth. The fence vibrates gently, then goes quiet. Everyone cheers. You are declared the fence bard, which comes with no pay, 1 ribbon, and the lifelong obligation to calm angry fences with bedtime stories. Historians do not reference singing fences in most texts, but local accounts confirm that objects in springtime often acted unusually. One field journal even mentions a gossiping barrel, though it was later revealed to be a very chatty raccoon. Later, the fence elder invites you for tea and insists on showing you her collection of musical shingles. You politely listen as she taps them with a spoon and hums along. As evening falls, you return home, ears still ringing with fence notes and goat tales. But peace does not last long, because someone knocks on your door carrying a pouch of lint, 2 feathers and a scroll tied in string. "I am here," the stranger says, "on behalf of the Lint Tax Office. And now it seems you owe back taxes." In fluff, the stranger stands at your door, tall and cloaked in finely stitched layers of wool, moss, and confidence. His boots are far too clean for someone who just walked through your very muddy village. He carries a satchel labelled Department of Lint and Regret, and a small feathered quill that seems entirely too smug for its size. "I'm here," he repeats, "to collect your seasonal contribution. Pocket lint feather fragments, and if you can spare them 3 audible sighs of winter sorrow." You blink. Failure to comply, he adds, may result in mild inconvenience and paperwork. You invite him in, because refusing would be rude and possibly magical. This is the lint tax collector, a figure who arrives every spring with no warning, no formal identification, and yet no one ever questions him. Some say he's a leftover from a forgotten guild. Others insist he's a seasonal spirit. One villager swears they saw him turn into a dust cloud when startled by a squirrel. He settles into your chair, pulls out a small ledger, and begins checking boxes. "Let's begin," he says. "First lint." You retrieve a jar from your shelf labelled Maisk, fuzz, and pour it into his offered pouch. He sniffs it, nods. Good texture, slightly singed, acceptable. "Feathers?" he asks. You point to a pile near the hearth. "Chicken shed cleaning day," you explain. He makes a note. "Bonus credit," he mutters. "Now," he says, folding his hands, the sighs. You inhale deeply. Sigh 1 dramatic. Sigh 2 wistful. Sigh 3 slightly wheezy but heartfelt. He beams. Beautifully done. You've earned 2 lint credits and an exemption from future cobweb audits. You are not sure what that means, but it sounds like a win. As he stands to leave, he gifts you a tiny broom handmade from thistle bristles and good intentions. To sweep away future regrets, he explains, and maybe breadcrumbs. Historians don't agree on the origins of this character. Some suggest he was a metaphor created by a lonely weaver. Others suspect he's a prank made real by collective belief. Regardless, he appears each spring, collects fluff, blesses, fireplaces, and vanishes without a trace. Later that night, as you hang your lint exemption slip near the door, you hear a gentle whoosh outside. You peek out. He's gone. Only a faint trail of wool fibres remains. You sigh again, just in case. Then remember, tonight is moon circle night, when villagers leave food in fields and whisper to the stars. You grab your best cheese. It's time to picnic with the unknown. The moon is high, a silver coin tossed into the dark velvet sky, and you are walking barefoot across dewy grass with a wedge of cheese in one hand and a slightly wrinkled apple in the other. It is moon picnic night, the village's most quietly peculiar tradition. Once a year, when the moon is full and the clouds stay politely out of the way, everyone takes a piece of food, a blanket, and a sense of curiosity out into the open fields. The goal is simple. Leave an offering, stay awake and wait. Wait for what exactly? Well, that depends on whom you ask. Some say the moon folk come strange visitors, made of mist and moonlight who appreciate snacks and interpret your dreams by rearranging food. Others claim it is a way to speak to ancient ancestors or coax the stars into favouring next year's harvest. You lay out your cheese carefully, slice your apple into crescent moons, and sprinkle a few breadcrumbs just in case someone from the Divination Society is watching. All around the field, neighbours are doing the same. A baker arranges pies in a spiral. The blacksmith's apprentice has stacked boiled eggs into a wobbly tower. One child is singing to a carrot. And then silence. Not a heavy, spooky silence, more like a shared breath. The kind of hush that makes you feel like the whole world is listening. You look up at the moon. It seems closer than usual. Historians have recorded versions of moon picnic night in different regions, often linked to planting seasons, celestial calendars, or sheer cabin fever. One document mentions a field of cheese being reconsidered by invisible hands. Another simply says, never look away from the bread, not once. Midway through the night, something shifts. Your cheese is no longer where you left it. It is moved precisely 1 inch to the left. Your apple slices now form a circle instead of a line. You did not touch them, nor did the wind, you are certain. Across the field, a low gasp echoes, as others notice similar things. A biscuit now has a bite. Someone's gourd has been rotated. You smile, you say thank you, quietly. It is important not to be loud when the moon folk visit. They prefer politeness, soft chewing, and well-arranged dairy. Eventually the moon begins its slow descent. Blankets are folded. Food is gathered, what remains of it. A few items are left behind, as is tradition, in case the visitors wish to take seconds. You return home sleepy but exhilarated. Your cheese moved. Your apple was read like a poem. Your soul feels slightly more mysterious. You tuck yourself in and stare at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Because in this village, just surviving the cold was only the beginning. Spring has secrets. And the next one may arrive with toast turnips or something even stranger.